$1 million Bitcoin, Samson. When's that gonna happen?
My guess is it's going to be this year.
It's going to be this year. That's a 10x.
Bitcoin has 17x in the past. There is no upper bound to Bitcoin. People talk about diminishing returns, right? But if it's a step change, just like the failure of the German mark, it's not a gradual thing and there's no upper bound. It's just gone.
Are they scared of Bitcoin, Samson?
I think the IMF is definitely scared of Bitcoin because they are a fiat organization. With Bitcoin, they're irrelevant, or they need to adopt Bitcoin. It's their choice. Either you adapt or you die.
My question to you is, why is the price still at $97,000 if we have all this massive purchasing going on? Is it like a flush?
So there's two things I would say. One is there are obviously OGs or old hodlers that are going to sell something and, buy a house, maybe enjoy life a bit. So there will always be some coins that are sold outside of the mine supply. But there's also roughly 2 million coins that sit on exchange for market making, trading, and arbitrage. And those 2 million coins, it's dropping obviously. Now it was at more than 2 million before, but now it's at around 2 million. But that is enough for the coins to drop the market. And a lot of it has to do with Bitcoin being a 24/7 market as well. So this drop, I believe, is related to the tariff war. American, Canadian, Mexican, well, we're all going to tariff each other. And it's just panic. So Bitcoin being the only 24/7 liquid market is the only thing that can react immediately. So it's sort of like the market sentiment is taken out on Bitcoin. We're the first to move, the most volatile and the biggest move. And then the equities markets and everything else follows after that when the markets open. Such an antiquated concept, right? But that's what it is. But going back to the point, those 2 million coins is enough to move the market a little bit. And the impact of those 2 million coins, I believe, is becoming less and less pronounced as we increase hodlers. So if you break down the schema of who impacts Bitcoin price, you have the hodlers. Zero impact. They're just sitting on the coins. And in ways you can look at it, they're coiling up that spring. Then you have the buyers, the people that are DCAing either like by day or by month, or you can say MicroStrategy is also in the DCA category, and HODLing, but they're actively in acquisition mode and Metaplanet. And like you said, then you have the traders, which is kind of that 2 million coins. So that is kind of what is driving the market. And Bitcoin will always be volatile because you have that slush fund of coins on exchanges, but that is going to be drained over time. And we do see that. And it makes it more pronounced, the coil up effect from the DCAers and the hodlers.
Absolutely. What do you think about Trump being elected?
I think Trump is the best choice of the current slate of candidates that we have right now, and probably the best option for America moving forward in this period of time, because he's able to bring together different groups. Like he brought Elon Musk. You might think he's a shitcoiner and whatnot, but he is the richest man in the world and influential and capable. He's able to bring RFK group, the people that are concerned about health and other things, and some activism, environmentalism. So he is able to kind of bridge together different segments of the population that hasn't really been done before in recent times. So I think Trump coin, Melania coin aside, it was the best choice that America could have made. The other choice was Kamala and dark times, more Elizabeth Warren, Chokepoint 3.0, everything bad possibly for Bitcoin and the crypto industry. But now we see the tariffs, and that's another interesting can of worms. But at least you can see that the tariffs are going to be great for Bitcoin. I think near term, people that are affected by the tariffs, they probably can't see it. Or if they're not into Bitcoin, they may not be thinking about this. But it's going to drive a lot of people to look at Bitcoin and protect themselves.
Okay. And the thing that interested me also is you said Operation Chokepoint 3.0. And we just went through Operation Chokepoint 2.0. And a lot of the things that they were doing, they were trying to obfuscate it. They weren't being transparent about it. Do you believe that it was a malicious attack on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin industry to at least slow down the adoption of it in the United States?
Definitely. It was a kind of covert operation to throttle Bitcoin and crypto adoption. And it's really just to protect the existing system, right? Protect the Fed, protect the dollar in a certain way, protect the banking system in a certain way, and all the incumbents, right? And you see that with, closure of some of the banks for absolutely no reason. I think Signature, right? It was just closed for no reason whatsoever. And if you guys had elected Kamala, you would have, 3.0, another version of Chokepoint. And without the new checks and balances that Department of Government Efficiency is trying to introduce.
It sucks that he named it after Doge.
Yeah, take the good with the bad.
It was a massive troll. What do you think about Ross being freed?
I think that's the most important thing. So I had a wish list for Trump. I had some predictions and a wish list. I think if he just frees Ross and stops attacking Bitcoin, like stops the attack on Bitcoin HODLing, I think that's enough. A strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's good for the government. It doesn't really do much for the people, except for a mass education program for the people. Like, okay, the government has it, now I should have it. But outside of that, it doesn't really do anything for your average person in the US directly.
So one of the arguments is that it would be used to pay down the debt. It'd be used to, get the country out of debt, have this reserve for the country, and it'd be beneficial. Like, at least that's how it's being pitched. You're saying that that would be beneficial for the US government, but that wouldn't necessarily be beneficial for US individuals.
Paying off the debt would be beneficial for US individuals, but
If they used it for that.
yes, if they use it, but you don't know what they will use
That's
it
a
for.
big if.
And you don't know what the composition will be yet either of because it's not a strategic Bitcoin reserve now, it's a digital asset reserve, which is broad and diverse and inclusive, but we don't know yet what's going to be in there. And hopefully it'll be just Bitcoin, but there are obviously altcoin projects lobbying to be included, like Ripple.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really interesting about El Salvador is how much it's been focused solely on Bitcoin. It's like it's resisted that. How come?
I think President Bukele is a Bitcoiner. Trump is not a Bitcoiner. He spoke at, Nashville conference, but he's not a Bitcoiner. He's done a lot of other crypto-related projects, and I don't think he fully understands Bitcoin, and you can kind of pick that level of understanding out from his speech. If you compare his speech to RFK's speech, it's a world of difference. So he's more crypto, right? And that's probably why the US is not as Bitcoin maximalist as El Salvador is. So we'll see how things go over time. But there are a lot of lobbying groups in the US, obviously, too, exchanges that are trying to push him towards, crypto. And if it diversifies the reserve, that's probably why.
So recently the IMF and El Salvador reached an agreement so that El Salvador would receive a loan. And I think a lot of people are seeking clarity in terms of, is Bitcoin still legal tender in the country?
Yeah, so it's confusing. And I would say the breakdown is this. It's a glass of water. It's kind of at the halfway mark. You can look at it as half full or half empty. So the Bitcoin law has been softened, or you can say neutered a bit. They've amended it to comply with the IMF agreement, almost to the letter. So everything they said in the IMF agreement, they've amended it. But I think the key thing is the amendments leave the door kind of open. It's ambiguous. So there is still a Bitcoin law, but Bitcoin is no longer a currency. And it is legal tender, but it is now voluntary. So what does that mean exactly? It means Bitcoin is legal tender. There's no capital gains tax still.
Okay.
There's another line in there that says you can use Bitcoin. The government can't now. So there is this Bitcoin law. Bitcoin is legal tender. But what is a legal tender without enforcement? Not that there was before. It always has been voluntary. So you can look at it both ways. Like, some people are reacting very strongly and saying, they capitulated, they bent the knee to the IMF, and, Bukele sold us out. And they're very disillusioned. And then you have the promoters of El Salvador and Bukele, and they're saying, yeah, we won. We're going to take the money and buy Bitcoin with IMF money. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. There was a compromise. There was adaptation. The law itself is weakened, but Bitcoin still has a standing here in El Salvador. So you take the good with the bad. And I think it makes sense in the long run. Bukele is not the president of Bitcoin. He's the president of El Salvador. I mean, he has to do what he thinks is the right thing for this country. And if he thinks the right thing for the country is to secure the IMF loan, which will lead to other loans, then that's the way they should go.
There's a couple things that are quite interesting to me. So it's still legal tender, but it's voluntary. And El Salvador is still continually buying it almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sounds like a pretty good compromise. And then if you're coming at it from a Bitcoiner's perspective, you would want Bitcoin to be adopted from the bottom up. You wouldn't want a top down type of thing. And what really sticks out to me, and I remember I asked Mrs. Mayorga, the ambassador to the United States from El Salvador, and I asked her the same thing about capital gains. And I think that's the part that sticks out.
Yeah.
Because as long as there's no tax implications from you using Bitcoin as money, then what does it matter if it doesn't have, what does it matter if it has the official stamp of legal tender if people are just still using it to transact?
Yeah, so there are things that we can do. So Jan3, we work on nation state Bitcoin adoption. There are interesting paths for us to use Bitcoin as legal tender as a currency. We can go to other countries that have laws recognizing foreign currencies like Guatemala, and we can say, you know, Mr. President, just accept it. It's a foreign currency. There's precedent already for recognizing and using foreign currencies in different countries. So that's an angle that is interesting for Bitcoin and for Jan3 to push. But we can live without that. Or we can get another country to make it a currency and follow that angle again. But I think the top-down is beneficial still, because launching Chivo, making these announcements, promoting Bitcoin and Bitcoin education initiatives, that is top-down, but is sort of an endorsement and a blessing. And a lot of people, they look towards the government, obviously not us, but they look towards the government for approval before they do something. And it is something. It is worth something.
And before I ask you about Jan3, do you believe that this was a setback for nation state adoption?
It's to be seen.
Okay.
It's to be seen. It's not really a setback for nation state adoption. I believe nation state adoption has already taken off. So once El Salvador made the move, we started going forth. I started Jan3. I brought on a lot of amazing people to the team, and we put together this network of people going out and engaging. We've met with the president of Madeira. He said, I'm going to make Madeira, a place for Bitcoin. We met with presidents in many countries around the world. We've met with regulators, politicians, and even central banks. And the tide, I believe, has turned. We now have some central banks reaching out to us. Someone passed them our email, and we got an email a few months back saying, we would like to discuss hyperbitcoinization.
No way.
Yes. And then the emails are, from the central bank. We said, yeah, we're happy to talk. We know who introduced us, but then they sent a meeting invite, and the meeting invite was hyperbitcoinization.
Was it like a Google Meet?
Yes.
So it was just on a calendar, Google Calendar, hyperbitcoinization, and you're meeting with the central bank.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. Before I ask you about the IMF and what their motivation would be to do something like this with El Salvador, or to ask El Salvador to compromise, what is Jan3?
Jan3 is a company. We do a lot of things. Our mission is to accelerate Bitcoin adoption, or hyperbitcoinization. And basically anything that falls into this mission, we will pursue. So one of the first things we did was launch the Aqua wallet, a non-custodial Bitcoin and layer 2 and stablecoin wallet, because we see an opportunity to onboard the 400 million or so Tether USDT users into Bitcoin. They're already using Tether. And the sad thing is they're using Tether in altcoin wallets. So they're getting pushed, NFTs and staking and DeFi and gambling. And there is no Bitcoin wallet that's out there in a meaningful way showcasing Bitcoin, layer 2 and Tether. Just a really simple offering. And that was our mission, to kind of onboard those people into Bitcoin and give a Bitcoin wallet that has a lot of utility. So that's one of the aspects of the business. We have Jan3 Financial. We offer some financial products and services. One of them is an OTC. So we've been running that for about a year now. And the goal is that we have a track record. And when the next country says, I want to buy $10 billion of Bitcoin, we can say, well, we'll help you with that. And then we have the nation state push, which is just a lot of us in our free time, which is not that much, plus a network of volunteers around the world that try to get us meetings with presidents and finance ministers, ministers of economy, all of these to push for Bitcoin adoption around the world at the top-down level. So we kind of do both. We work on top-down and grassroots.
I love that. So just focused on hyper-Bitcoinization. I want to ask you about the Aqua wallet, because I think a lot of Bitcoiners expected that in the developing world, you're going to see massive adoption of Bitcoin as people sought non-sovereign alternatives because their local fiat currencies were so terrible. But I think what we saw instead, what the market is telling us, is we're seeing this massive adoption of stablecoins,
Yeah.
specifically stablecoin Tether, like the dollar stablecoin.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. I think a lot of Bitcoiners didn't expect that, but being from Latin America myself originally, I think for a lot of people, it's hard to understand that they're just trying to get by.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have the luxury of being able to save.
Yeah.
So just having a currency that is stable, that they can earn in, is a massive upgrade to, where they could have been before.
Yeah. I think it comes down to Alex Gladstein's book title, check your financial privilege. A lot of Bitcoiners, especially really hardcore maximalists, are like Bitcoin and nothing else. But you have the luxury as a Bitcoiner in the West to buy Bitcoin. A lot of people are just trying to earn a living and get by. They may not have a bank account. They can't get a bank account because they don't have an address. And they're excluded. The financial system is a two-tier system. People can get in and people cannot get in. That's it. And it's engineered that way. And it will always be that way. The only thing that can break that system is Bitcoin. So the reason why people are seeking Tether and stablecoins is because they need access to that system. They don't yet understand Bitcoin, but they do want the dollar to hedge, right? So if you're a merchant and you're selling stuff and your suppliers want dollars or Argentinian pesos and you have Bitcoin, there is volatility in Bitcoin both ways. And we can't ignore the fact that some guy taking Bitcoin can lose a significant amount of money just by taking Bitcoin and not hedging, because that's not their savings. It's not yet really savings as long as there is volatility. It's savings for people that can weather volatility. People that can't, they need a stable unit. And Bitcoiners like to say, well, stable coins are not stable because the fiat money is devaluing, but compared to the Argentinian peso, the dollar is gold, right? Or compared to the bolivar, it's gold. And I think we just have to ignore people that criticize that and focus on onboarding these 400 million people to liquid Tether and Bitcoin.
Well, it's a stepping stone.
It is.
And then there's another part. It's an interesting phenomenon too, because as Bitcoiners, shouldn't we be free market maxis, right? And the market is telling us, right, that the developing world, massively in Latin America, they're really interested in getting a dollar rather than, Bitcoin. I think it's an educational thing. I think it's a survival thing.
Yes.
I think it's like the principle, like the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Right. Like you just need to be able to survive, and then you start thinking. And I think it's a Trojan horse because it gives people essentially the ability to custody dollars in their mind on a digital wallet without having to go through a bank account. And then eventually they're going to come to the conclusion that all of us have had in the West, which is like, the dollar is a scam too.
Yeah.
And all roads lead to Bitcoin. Now, you said that Jan3 focuses on hyper-Bitcoinization. What is that?
Hyper-Bitcoinization is the point at which we no longer convert Bitcoin into fiat. There's only Bitcoin left. So it's the end state, really. And you could say it's hyperinflation of the dollar, really. Right? When a dollar hyperinflates, then no one's going to want the dollar. They will just want Bitcoin. So yeah, it's the greatest demonetization event in human history. Basically, all fiat will die all at the same time, very rapidly, and everyone just wants Bitcoin and transacts in Bitcoin.
Really? It's just, so you don't see a world where the dollar and Bitcoin can coexist?
I don't see it, but a lot of Bitcoiners do see it. I think Saylor is one of those. Like, if you look at his Bitcoin 24 model, right? He actually tapers off the model after a number of years to kind of slow the death of Bitcoin, slow the death of fiat. So Bitcoin growth tapers off. But I think monetary systems, especially when you're dealing with 100x improvement over the old system and even over gold, it's not a gradual taper. It's just a flip of the switch. Everyone's just going to switch to this new thing. I don't see that happening in Bitcoin, and we didn't even see that happen with the devaluation of the German mark. It wasn't that it slowly tapered off, and there was one baker in this village over there that was still taking the mark, 5 years later, because that network effect of that money dies. So maybe some people have it in a drawer, but no one's actually going to exchange anything for the mark.
I mean, that's going to be a pretty big impact on the world, right?
That's why we're working on getting Bitcoin adoption out there as fast as we can to soften the fall.
Okay.
It's like the Foundation series, right?
Yeah.
You can't stop the fall, although we can soften the fall.
And it's going to radically change the world. And before I get to that, like, what are the implications of essentially fiat ending? Because it's going to be essentially a change in the balance of power between the state and the individual. And I think there's very, very deep implications there. But what do you think were the motivations behind the IMF asking for those concessions from El Salvador? Are they scared of Bitcoin, Samson?
I think the IMF is definitely scared of Bitcoin because they are a fiat organization. For those people that don't know, they have their own shitcoin. It's called the
SDR.
Yeah, SDR, Strategic Drawing Rights, which means they can just kind of print their own money out of thin air too. But with Bitcoin, they're irrelevant, or they need to adopt Bitcoin. It's their choice. Either you adapt or you die. But I think there's another darker angle here, which is they're basically a loan shark. Their job is to lend money in perpetuity to countries like El Salvador and, developing places around the world. And this kind of puts them out of a job. So I think they had to fight for that, or they wanted to save face, because remember, they made a big stink about all the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador, that, you're going to fail, it's dangerous and whatnot. And when they're wrong and they're incorrect and the metrics prove them incorrect, vastly incorrect, I think they need something to save face. So maybe they insisted on these concessions just so they can say, yes, we got something.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. It definitely felt that way because it was like, haha, we won. But it's what you said with the analogy of the glass, right? It really depends on how you look at it. But the most important aspects, there's no capital gains implications.
Yeah.
You could still use it as money. They're still buying it as reserve. So did they really win? Right? It's like an optics. It was for the optics more than the substance.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
And as you said, it doesn't really matter because that's kind of government top-down adoption is icing on the cake. The real important part is the grassroots adoption. And I think that still needs work too. We should not be lying to ourselves and say, yeah, it's perfect already. We've got, educational initiatives and we're good here. There's still a lot of people here in El Salvador that have no idea. And we still have a lot of work to do.
Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledn is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to HODL while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledn.io today.